Hi guys. Something shifted quietly over the last few years, and most women felt it before they even had any title or language for it. What was that? Men stopped chasing, men stopped explaining, men stopped reacting, and women hated the silence that followed. No big declarations, no coordinated moves, no predictable scripts, just a subtle withdrawal that changed everything. This didn't happen because men suddenly grew confident overnight. It started with boundaries. Quiet boundaries, unannounced, unargued, boundaries that didn't ask for permission. Men became harder to move, slower to react, and less willing to shift their emotional energy to fit someone else's expectations. That one adjustment disrupted the entire dynamic between men and women almost invisibly and yet so profoundly. I'm Mary Smith, and today on Mindful Senior Living, we're going to explore this shift, what it means, and how it plays out in real relationships. I want you to think about the relationships you've observed, maybe in your friends or even in your own life. Have you noticed moments when someone just stops trying so hard to please or explain themselves, and suddenly everything feels different? There's tension, there's curiosity, there's a subtle recalibration of power. That feeling, that subtle pull, is the heart of what we're exploring today. And it's not about games or manipulation. It's about self-respect, emotional intelligence, and reclaiming presence in a world that often expects men to bend first. Now, let me take a moment to connect this to something real. Imagine a friend you know, a man who has always over-explained himself. Texting back immediately, softening criticism, apologizing for things he didn't even do. Then, slowly, he stops. He doesn't over-explain anymore. He doesn't chase after reassurance. He just exists, grounded and calm, focused on his life, his work, his passions. Suddenly, people notice a shift. The women around him feel it first: confusion, curiosity, even irritation. It's not because he's changed who he is, it's because he stopped giving access to his emotional energy freely. He's teaching them a new rhythm, that attention and respect are not automatic. They are aligned with boundaries and self-possession. Here's the interesting psychological part. Most attraction collapses the moment a man over-explains. Long texts, clarifications, defensive language, these behaviors actually erode leverage and respect. When men become still instead of reactive, they flip the entire dynamic without even speaking a word. Think about this. A woman drops a loaded comment, a passive jab meant to provoke a reaction. The old response would be reassurance, softening, justification. But when a man listens, acknowledges internally, and doesn't flinch, something shifts. The tension sits for a moment, unresolved by his energy, and she has to process it herself. That silence, that measured stillness, is a subtle but profound signal that her usual leverage no longer works. And this isn't just theory. I've seen it countless times. There's a man I worked with, let's call him David. He was the classic over-explainer. Every misunderstanding became a debate, every doubt required validation, every emotional spike demanded a response. We worked on establishing boundaries first. No over-texting, no immediate defense, no chasing after reassurance. Within weeks, the dynamic with his partner changed. She started initiating more, showing interest in ways she hadn't before, because the constant emotional negotiation had disappeared. He didn't manipulate or control. He simply became composed, consistent, and emotionally neutral. That quiet power recalibrated the relationship naturally. Another critical point is about effort and access. When access is guaranteed, value collapses. Men who match effort instead of exceeding it create a natural equilibrium. I want you to notice this in your own life. Maybe she takes hours to respond, tests patience with small inconsistencies. The old response might have been irritation, sarcasm, or escalation, but when the response becomes calm, grounded, and unshaken, she starts to adjust. Predictability disappears. Emotional dynamics shift. Power is restored through measured absence, not withdrawal, not ghosting, just through emotional steadiness. Detachment from outcomes is another transformative shift. Most men historically tied identity to results. If she stayed, they felt validated. If she pulled away, they felt devastated. Women sensed this immediately and responded accordingly. But when a man becomes outcome neutral, attraction can no longer be negotiated or coerced. It's no longer about panic disguised as confidence. Instead, it's about living fully, independent of the other's reactions, which naturally compels behavioral shifts. She might hint at leaving, create distance, or suggest other options. The old reaction would have been panic, persuasion, or emotional pleading. The new approach? Calm observation, continued presence in your own life, and refusal to overreact. It's the essence of emotional composure. And I want to pause here and address something many men miss. This is not about being cold or detached in a harmful way. It's about emotional regulation, not emotional suppression. You are not numbing yourself. You are prioritizing structure over reaction. Your stability becomes the frame through which interactions flow. Women sense this immediately, which is why they sometimes escalate. But escalation in this context is a natural recalibration, not a conflict. It's a signal that your consistent presence and measured responses are creating a new rhythm, one where emotional leverage is no longer unconsciously given. When manipulation is removed from the equation, frustration arises. Why? Because manipulation feeds on variability, highs and lows, predictable reactions, emotional volatility. When a man becomes steady and focused, there is literally nothing to pull on. Boredom sometimes appears, but it's a positive signal. The interaction is no longer fueled by reactive dynamics. I've seen this play out in long-term relationships as well. When a man stops rewarding emotional volatility, he disengages from negativity, refuses to chase closure, stays grounded. He teaches that his time and attention carry weight. Authority, consistency, and calm composure, not dramatic gestures, define the power dynamic. This is the core of what many men fail to grasp. Women didn't lose power because men became better. They lost leverage because men stopped reacting. Reactivity was the primary tool women unconsciously used to influence outcomes. Men who hold steady, who don't need emotional outcomes to stabilize their sense of self, are rare, not because of looks or status, but because they embody emotional independence. And that shift can feel unsettling to those around them, prompting tests, complaints, and moments of confusion. But it's precisely the sign that your boundaries and presence are reshaping the dynamics naturally. Another way men quietly reclaimed power is by learning to be hard to manipulate. Think about it. Manipulation thrives on emotional variability. High highs, low lows, predictable reactions. That's the playground for influence. When a man becomes focused, steady, and grounded, there's simply nothing to pull on. And when that happens, women often label it as emotional distance. But it's not distance. It's regulation, it's composure, it's the ability to hold your frame without needing validation from anyone. Let me give you an example. A woman might become highly emotional about a small conflict or a misunderstanding. In the past, a man might have mirrored the stress, reassured, over-explained, or chased closure. But the new approach is different. Listen once, respond clearly if needed, then disengage calmly. Don't rehash, don't chase, don't justify. Your time, attention, and energy have weight, and by holding that standard, you teach others to respect it. This plays out especially in long-term relationships. Often, women are unconsciously trained to be the emotional backbone, the one whose moods dictate the interaction and set the pace. But when a man refuses to reward that dynamic, the emotional rhythm naturally changes. She might escalate at first, testing whether the old leverages still work. Then she softens, adjusts, and begins to engage differently. He doesn't celebrate her reach. He simply receives it with composure. Authority isn't shown through ultimatums or confrontations. It's demonstrated through presence and stability. And that in itself shifts the dynamic in profound ways over time. I want to pause here to emphasize a critical psychological insight. Women don't respond to random withdrawal. They respond to predictable emotional consistency paired with unshakable boundaries. The shift we've been talking about, less chasing, less over-explaining, less reactive behavior, isn't a superficial trick. It's in alignment with a deeper principle. When access is earned rather than given freely, respect and attraction flourish. When men stop feeding the emotional economy without standards, the balance naturally returns to them. This is backed by decades of social psychology research on attachment, reciprocity, and influence in human relationships. Let's bring this closer to you with a practical exercise. Next time you feel the urge to clarify, defend, or justify, pause. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, is my response about reinforcing my values and boundaries, or is it about easing someone else's discomfort? Respond only if it aligns with your structure. If not, allow silence to do the work. Over time, this trains not just your reactions, but your sense of self and your presence in interactions. You'll notice women adjusting without being prompted. That's the power of subtle, consistent boundary work. Another shift worth noting is how men detached from outcomes. Most men tie their identity to results. If she stays, they feel validated. If she pulls away, they feel devastated. But outcome neutrality changes everything. It's not indifference, it's emotional freedom. You continue living your life, independent of another's choices. She might hint at leaving, mention other options, or create space to provoke reassurance. The old response would have been panic or persuasion. The new response, calm observation and continued engagement in your own life. This forces her behavior to shift naturally because your attraction isn't negotiable. Outcome-neutral men never have to chase validation because their presence already carries weight. Let me share a story to illustrate this. I worked with a client, we'll call him James. James was attached to outcomes. Every text delayed, every cancellation, every small disagreement felt like a personal failure. His partner noticed and unconsciously took advantage of his reactivity. We worked on shifting his mindset to outcome neutrality. He began approaching each interaction with calm composure, prioritizing his values and activities first. Within weeks, his partner's approach changed. She initiated more, respected his boundaries, and engagement became more reciprocal. James didn't manipulate or withdraw emotionally. He simply stopped negotiating attraction. That subtle internal shift transformed the relationship from imbalance to natural equilibrium. Another important element of this shift is understanding the emotional economy in relationships. Attention without standards creates entitlement. When men overgive, over-explain, or chase emotional reassurance, women unconsciously normalize it. This isn't about blame, it's about natural social dynamics. When men stop overgiving, the emotional economy rebalances. Power doesn't come from control, it comes from measured presence, emotional consistency, and strategic stillness. That stillness forces others to reflect on their own behavior and motivates them to engage more consciously. Here's a practical exercise for that as well. During your interactions, notice when someone is subtly testing you, through a comment, a passive-aggressive remark, or a mild provocation. Instead of reacting, pause. Maintain your tone, maintain your energy, and continue what you are doing. Let the test exist without giving it emotional fuel. Over time, you'll notice that those tests either fade or become opportunities for meaningful connection, not manipulation. This leads to another shift. Understanding the importance of rhythm over reaction. Women often unconsciously mirror emotional energy, expecting consistent chasing or reassurance. When men match rhythm rather than overgive, tension arises. Irritation may surface, not because there's conflict, but because influence has temporarily shifted. For example, she might take hours to respond, yet you maintain your calm, consistent tone. You neither escalate nor punish. You allow the interaction to follow a natural cadence. This teaches that your engagement is a choice aligned with your boundaries, not a reaction to her emotional spikes. And here's a psychological nugget. Attachment theory shows that predictable, grounded behavior paired with measured absence creates attraction because it restores the natural balance of interdependence. It's not manipulation, it's consistency combined with emotional self-regulation. Women subconsciously sense this stability, which is why escalation and mixed signals occur initially. It's the process of recalibrating a dynamic that was once reactive. Over time, relationships naturally stabilize around this new rhythm. Let's dig even deeper into how men quietly reclaimed their power. Emotional restraint combined with clear internal structure. When a man becomes steady, He teaches those around him that his attention and energy are not automatic commodities. Women often escalate emotions initially because they're testing. Does he still chase? Does he still over-explain? Does he still bend? But the truth is, escalation is a signal of adjustment, not conflict. The more composed you remain, the faster the relationship recalibrates. For instance, consider a situation where a woman expresses irritation over something minor. In the past, a reactive response, apology, justification, chasing, would reinforce the old pattern. The new approach is simple. Acknowledge internally, respond if necessary with clarity, then continue your focus. She learns that emotional outbursts no longer control the pace or attention. This is the essence of self-possession and quiet influence. Another shift is the power of selective engagement. When men match effort rather than exceed it, they create natural balance. For example, if she takes hours to respond or tests attention, a composed, grounded response sets a new rhythm. You do not escalate, you do not mirror sarcasm, and you do not punish. You simply respond when appropriate with the same calm energy. Over time, this builds respect and subtly shifts her behavior. It also protects your energy from being drained by emotional negotiation. The lesson here is clear. Attention is powerful when it is earned, not automatically given. Detachment from outcomes continues to play a critical role. Most men historically tied self-worth to results. If she stayed, they felt validated. If she left, they felt devastated. This creates a dynamic where emotional dependence is visible, and women unconsciously respond to it. Shifting to outcome neutrality changes this entirely. It's not indifference, it's emotional independence. You continue living fully, regardless of her choices, and that naturally motivates her to engage authentically. This approach also eliminates panic disguised as confidence, a common mistake. Instead, calm composure becomes the anchor for the entire interaction. Here's another practical exercise. Start small. The next time someone tests your emotional response, a provocative comment, a subtle criticism, or a passive-aggressive remark, practice observing internally first. Take a deep breath, notice your instinct to react, and choose a response that aligns with your values and priorities. If the response isn't necessary, allow silence to carry the weight. This practice strengthens emotional regulation and gradually builds the kind of presence that naturally commands respect and shifts dynamics. Let's talk about the emotional economy again, because this is where real long-term attraction is maintained. Overgiving attention without standards fosters entitlement, as women unconsciously normalize the behavior. When men stop overgiving, over-explaining, and overcompensating, the balance returns naturally. It's not about withholding affection, it's about creating structure over reaction, presence over panic. This is why men who hold their composure become rare, not because of looks, not because of status, but because they embody emotional independence. Women sense this shift instantly, which is why testing increases. Testing is a natural recalibration process, not a sign of failure. Consider another real-life example. A client of mine, we'll call him Robert, was constantly caught in reactive loops with his partner. Every disagreement became a negotiation. Every subtle complaint triggered over-explanation. We worked on 3 key practices. 1, quiet boundaries. 2, outcome neutrality. 3, emotional composure. Within weeks, the relationship changed. She initiated more. She respected his time and energy. She adjusted naturally, without arguments or ultimatums. Robert didn't manipulate or withdraw. He simply held his structure and prioritized his values. That's the kind of power that isn't learned overnight. It's built through practice, reflection, and intentional presence. Another important insight is understanding the difference between emotional distance and emotional regulation. Women often interpret calm, steady behavior as distance, but it's not. It's consistency and composure. Emotional regulation is the ability to respond intentionally rather than react impulsively. For example, if a woman becomes highly emotional, the old pattern might have been panic or overcompensation. The new approach is to listen, respond with clarity if necessary, and disengage calmly. This teaches that your time, attention, and energy are valuable and not to be manipulated. It also stabilizes long-term relationships because respect and attraction are maintained through consistent boundaries, not temporary gestures. Now, let's focus on practical steps you can implement immediately. First, create a personal boundary map. Identify areas where you tend to over-explain, chase validation, or bend unnecessarily. Second, practice outcome-neutral thinking. Recognize that your self-worth and identity are not tied to someone else's choices. Third, rehearse composure in small interactions. The more you practice emotional restraint in daily life, the easier it becomes in complex dynamics. Fourth, monitor the rhythm of your attention. Match effort, don't exceed it, and let natural engagement occur. Over time, these steps transform not just your relationships, but your entire presence and influence in social dynamics. Finally, it's important to understand that this is not about control or manipulation. It's about reclaiming personal power through emotional intelligence. You are not forcing someone to change. You are modeling stability, boundaries, and composure. This naturally invites authentic engagement, curiosity, and respect. Women sense it subconsciously, which is why escalation, testing, and subtle pushback appear initially. But with consistency, they adjust to the new rhythm, and genuine connection deepens without the need for drama or over-explanation. Another essential shift is understanding the role of predictability in attraction. When a man becomes consistent yet non-reactive, he introduces a kind of unpredictability that is subtle but powerful. Women are used to men who chase, over-explain, or react emotionally. They create a rhythm that is easily anticipated. When that pattern disappears, the predictability is gone, and the dynamic destabilizes in a way that naturally draws attention. She begins to adjust, sometimes by initiating, sometimes by testing, but always with more conscious engagement. This isn't manipulation or strategy, it's the natural result of holding presence, consistency, and composure. Let's consider another real-life scenario. A client of mine, we'll call him Michael, used to panic whenever his partner pulled away, over-texted, or implied dissatisfaction. We worked on 3 key areas. 1. Emotional composure. 2. Structured boundaries. And 3. Outcome neutrality. Over time, he noticed something remarkable. Instead of escalating tensions, his partner began to engage more thoughtfully. She reached out when it mattered. Her emotions were more measured, and the relationship became less about testing and more about mutual presence. Michael didn't need to chase, explain, or justify. He simply held his structure. That's the subtle, quiet shift that creates lasting attraction and respect. Another factor that strengthens influence is removing unnecessary access to your emotional energy. Most men give attention automatically, answering immediately, validating every feeling, accommodating every request. This creates a pattern where emotional leverage is unbalanced. When men learn to match effort, respond selectively, and hold their presence, they naturally restore equilibrium. Women sense this recalibration immediately. It might create temporary tension, but that tension is actually a healthy adjustment. It's the system balancing itself. I want to pause here to share a practical exercise. Over the next week, observe your reactions to small provocations or tests. Every time you feel the urge to over-explain, chase, or justify, pause. Ask yourself, does this response serve my values or feed a reactive pattern? If it doesn't serve your structure, allow silence to carry the weight. Over time, this strengthens emotional composure and teaches those around you that your presence is intentional, not automatic. Another major shift is learning to disengage from drama without disengaging from the relationship. Emotional spikes are natural, but they should not dictate your behavior. For example, if a woman becomes highly emotional over something minor, resist the impulse to mirror, absorb, or chase resolution immediately. Respond once with clarity, and then continue your focus on your priorities. This teaches that emotional manipulation no longer works and that your energy is respected. The long-term effect is profound. The relationship stabilizes around maturity, presence, and shared respect, not reactionary cycles. Now, let's address one of the most misunderstood aspects of this dynamic: women's testing. Mixed signals are not accidental. They are often subconscious attempts to gauge consistency and presence. When a man maintains composure, matches effort, and remains outcome neutral, these tests naturally decrease. Women begin to engage more authentically because the old leverages no longer work. That doesn't mean the relationship becomes cold or distant. On the contrary, connection deepens because interactions are no longer driven by manipulation or emotional chaos. They are guided by mutual respect, calm presence, and aligned values. To solidify this long-term, practice integrating all these elements into your daily life. Establish quiet boundaries, match effort, hold emotional composure, detach from outcomes, and disengage from unnecessary drama. Reflect regularly. Which areas do you naturally overreact? Where do you give attention automatically that could be more intentional? Small daily practices. Create a deep internal shift that naturally transforms your relationships. Finally, understand that this is not a temporary tactic. It's a mindset and lifestyle. Emotional composure, structured boundaries, outcome neutrality, and selective engagement are not about tricks or games. They are about reclaiming personal power, respecting your own time and energy, and allowing relationships to operate from mutual presence and conscious engagement. Women sense this immediately. That's why testing, escalation, and adjustments often appear early. But with consistency, they align naturally, creating relationships rooted in respect, attraction, and emotional balance. For those of you who want to go even deeper, my book, Attraction Secrets, walks you step by step through every element. How to pull back without looking bitter, how to hold your position without making a scene, and how to build composure that changes the way women respond to you long term. It includes practical exercises, real-life examples, and psychological insights that help you apply these shifts across dating, conflict, silence, and long-term relationships. If you're serious about maintaining presence, authority, and influence without overreacting, the link is in the description. So, remember this. Quiet boundaries, emotional composure, outcome neutrality, and selective engagement are the pillars of influence. They are not about chasing, explaining, or overreacting. They are about reclaiming your presence and teaching others to meet you where you stand. The shifts I've shared today aren't surface-level behaviors. They are deeper structures that maintain attraction and respect over time. Practice them consistently, and you'll notice subtle but powerful changes in the way people engage with you, the way women respond, and the way relationships naturally stabilize. Until the next video, I'm Mary Smith, and thank you for being here on Mindful Senior Living. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you found this helpful, and keep observing your own presence and energy as you practice these shifts in real life. Your composure is your power, and your presence is your influence. See you next time. Bye.